Nashville's #1 proponent of songwriting karma, Mr. Positive, and our good friend, Doak Turner.
Wow, thank you, Dave. That's going to be the hardest working and most organized guy in town right there. You just wouldn't believe the amount of time and effort he puts into making all of this happen. I mean, Dave himself and Larry and Lisa and all this great crew around here work so hard every month to make this happen. And this is seriously. The holidays are just around the corner. You see all of these guitars and all of this. Whatever you're looking for musically, come in here and support the local guys, okay? So everybody do that. Thank you to support these guys, so they put a lot of time, effort, and money into all of this. So we got to take care of the locally owned stores. Thank you, Dave, for all of those plugs. Music Starts Here is for the songwriters, artists, technicians, things like that. We have hit writers, artists, publishers, vocal coach, people like that, entertainment attorneys on the website, so go check it out and send us an email if it helps you, okay? I know there's a lot of new people here tonight. If you're new to town or just visiting, or this is your first night here, kind of raise your hand. Great, okay, all of you that's been here, make all of these people feel welcome. There's a lot of people that just moved to town. Be sure to talk with them after this, okay, see what they need, okay? Try to give a little networking tip every month. The networking tip is this Sunday at my house. You can write the address down, I'll give it to you. It's called the Third Sunday at 3. This is the 90th month in a row I've been able to do this because you all keep coming. And I'll give you the address. It's 701 Brook Hollow Road. The zip is 37205. What happens from 3 o'clock to 8 o'clock? Everybody brings food and beverages. You park across the street at the church parking lot. And you come and you meet, you eat. We're like Baptists, 2 or more songwriters are gathered. We have to break bread and beverages. Amen. It's just the unwritten rule here. So everybody brings something to drink or to share or some food. And everybody plays in 5 rooms of the house and also outside of it. It's going to be a beautiful Sunday this week. So everybody come and meet people. A lot of you are new to town. Visiting from, we got visitors from Australia. There's a guy I met the other day at Nashville. Austin, where are you? Raise your hand. Austin is working on, he's looking for a job as an intern for studio. He graduated from a college out west somewhere, I remember. So Austin, this is your new family. All you new people that just moved, just had a couple over here, a couple weeks ago moved from Mississippi. This is your songwriting family, okay? So everybody make them feel welcome. That's important, okay? Everybody make y'all feel welcome. Don't let them leave without giving them your card and saying if you need anything, give me a call, okay? People help you on leave. So thanks very much. This is a real privilege. I've known Chad for a couple years. We went to an event in Alabama together, something that they do called Muscle Shoals to Music Row. It's got to be like one of the most humbling guys, and that's what I love about the hit writers in this town. You talk to them, you have no idea the success. It doesn't matter. They're good people from the heart, and that's what matters. That's why I love this town. It keeps a lot of us here. Chuck Jones, tell you what, he has the songs recorded by artists such as Patti LaBelle, Ronnie Millsap, Shelby Lynn, Reba McEntire, Rascal Flatts, Randy Travis, Chris Ledoux, the Fabulous Thunderbirds. Is that cool? Charlie Daniels, Deanna Carter, Kenny Rogers, Clint Black, Peter Cetera, my favorite group, Chicago. In 1994, John Barry's version of Chuck's song, Your Love Amazes Me, hit #1 spot, and also won the Song of the Year from the Country Radio Music Awards and the Music City News Country Writers Awards. All of this stuff, by the way, remember I told you about the most organized guy in town, Dave? That's where this came from. He's so organized, it's on the website. Also had #1s with Diamond Rio's Love a Little Stronger and Billy Dean's It's What I Do. He's only had over 130 cuts in his career. That's pretty cool. Multiple top 10 awards, various other charting singles. And he's just the nicest guy in the world. He has a publishing company, Jones & for a Hit. catalog has garnered hits, cuts for Montgomery Gentry, Trace Adkins, Rascal Flatts, Jake Owen, Randy Houser. I think that's Strange. That's one you wrote with Chuck. Strange.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Oh, I love that song. And we're just privileged to have him here tonight. And we could go on with other cuts and artists, Holly Dunn and all these, Kathy Mattea, West Virginia girl. And anyway, these people come in here and do this, give their time to try to help you. So if you have questions, we'll have a Q&A session after I do some interviewing with Chuck, okay? Let's give a warm Nashville welcome, Mr. Chuck Jones. Thank you, Chuck.
How y'all doing tonight? It's good to be here. Appreciate you folks coming out, especially those of you who drove all the way from somewhere out of town.
Yeah, they love it here, man.
Pretty cool.
It's just amazing, Chuck. I looked through, here's about 4 or 5 pages, 130 different cuts from the same guy, man. That's just really incredible.
I didn't write all of them by myself.
Yeah. So, tell me about, you grew up in Memphis. Tell me about, say, the first time you heard some music that said, man, I love that. I got to do whatever that is.
Man, I tell you, I was, I'm a lot older than I look. I was born in '55, which was a magical time to be born into the world of music. And some of my earliest memories are of hearing things like Hound Dog by Elvis Presley on my dad's car radio of his '57 Chevy. And the Everly Brothers, the Beatles, hit America in around '64. And I had a couple older brothers who bought albums and singles first, actually. I was just having this conversation with someone before the show about how it's kind of come back to the way it was when I was a kid. There were no albums when I was very small, and nothing but singles with B-sides on them. And then the '60s kind of ushered in the LP format, which was a beautiful thing for songwriters, but it was a fairly narrow window in musical history, which most windows in musical history are, I've come to find. Everybody loses their heads and goes nuts thinking, it's changed, it's not the way it's been. Well, it's always been changing, and it's never the way it's been for long, But at any rate, I was exposed to all that cool music back in the early '50s and '60s, and a lot of really interesting Memphis R&B stuff I grew up listening to.
Did that affect you a lot, and with all the great stuff being right down the street or right down the road from where you were living? What was that?
It did. I did. Well, because back then what you heard a lot of on the radio was actually being picked and chosen to perform on the radio by the local DJs. And I actually have an older brother who's 3 years older than me. Who, when he got his driver's license, I guess I was about 13. He was 16, and he actually thought I was so good at one point. Of course, I was terrible at the time, I'm sure. I might have had one song I could play or a couple of songs I could play and sing at the same time. And so he put me in the car one day, though, and took me down to Stax Records. I'll never forget. Yeah. And, of course, we pulled up to the front gate, and they asked if we had an appointment, and we said no, and they said, well, you don't have to have an appointment. So we didn't make it in. We never made it in the gate, but I'll never forget that he did that for me. He took me up there. First time somebody believed that much in me.
Yeah. So what happened? You go through high school? Did you play in bands, anything like that? What'd you do when you start playing and singing?
I did all of the above, I guess I was probably 10 or so, 8 or 10 when I got my first guitar, a toy. Actually, I got toys from when I was 2 or 3, but I got my first real guitar probably around 10, 11, 12, somewhere around there, and got some guitar lessons, learned how to pick. I was always a huge fan of the guitar. And, electric guitars were fairly new back then. They were a fairly new instrument still. So most kids were pretty knocked out by electric guitars. It was a totally new sound, and it was very impactful on a lot of people. And but yeah, I basically just started learning how to play folk songs on the guitar first, like "Blowing in the Wind" by Bob Dylan, that kind of thing, And as I say, I had a brother who was also into music a little bit. So we started a band just around the house, and then I was 18 before I was in a band that actually performed in a public place.
then what happened? Did you end up just being around there? Were you working some regular jobs, and were you trying to learn about this, how it works, how the music business happens?
Yeah, I didn't work many regular jobs in my life, man. I've been very, I guess, fortunate in that respect. I was never very good at a regular job. I remember I had one when I was 18 and I got fired for lack of enthusiasm. Of course, we were making insulated glass panes. So I was pulling the panes off the washer and putting them together with a spacer, and I was like, yeah, I almost cut my thumb off, and I was like, you're right, I don't have much enthusiasm for this. So that was the last real job I had, actually, I guess, and ever since then I've somehow managed to make a living either playing in bars, playing in hotel lounges. I've been in everything from solos to duos to trios to 8-piece horn bands. Back during the 70s, the disco craze, I was in a lot of horn bands, rock and roll bands. I've probably been in 50 bands in my life, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Could keep a job, and they kept them.
Well, you know, musicians, man, it's just hard to keep them together.
Yeah. Let's talk about, when did you decide you were in Memphis and, man, I got to be in Nashville? What was that?
Well, interestingly enough, I was in a band with a friend from Memphis named Trey Bruce, who's also a songwriter, producer here in town now. And he moved over here a little bit ahead of me, about 6 months. He and his wife moved over here. And I came over one weekend. We were still playing, and he would come back to Memphis to perform every weekend. And I came up here to visit him one weekend and to write songs with him. We had just started kind of writing around that time. And our band was writing songs, and we were actually getting a little, you know, a small local buzz, and so we were making an EP like everybody did back then. And so anyway, Trey got me over here one weekend and to write, and he just drove me around on Music Row. And by that time, Memphis, there was no industry there. There had been a great industry there in the early, all the way 50s through the mid to late 60s. But by the time I came over here, that was all gone. And all the the cool old Sun Records, Stax Records, American Records, they were all a thing of the past. And I came over here, and he took me for a ride down Music Row, and it didn't look anything like it does today. He didn't have any of those huge buildings, but he would just drive me around and say, there's Warner Brothers Records, there's RCA, there's, it wasn't Sony at the time, it was CBS, but there's this, there's that, here's the publishing company, here's the publishing company. And I just looked around and I thought, dang, what am I doing in Memphis, man? This is where the business is. So I went home, and my wife, who we weren't actually married at the time, but she was very gracious and followed me over here like a month later. Thanks, Becky. And so I went home basically and said, let's go to Nashville. And she says, well, I've had this same job for 8 years and it's working out pretty well, but okay.
Wow, let's hear it for the Wire. Wow, come on.
Couldn't have done it without her, I'll tell you that.
So what was it like? You came to Nashville. What did you know about it? How did you learn? What was the first couple of years like of your journey?
Well, moving here cold, it was, it's like it is today. I mean, you gotta make your connections, and so I moved here, and of course, right off the bat, just kind of had to get some money coming in to help pay a few bills around the house. And I was actually driving back to Memphis on the weekends for a little while, playing in the same band with Trey Bruce, but fairly soon that all fell apart, and so and it got to where, okay, I need something where I can play. Actually, I worked for Manpower as one of the first jobs I had, just, one of those places that basically calls you up for, whatever they happen to have a need for employees that day. So I did that for about a year, and then I actually did some waited tables. I remember my biggest waiter job was at Opryland. I got a job in the banquet department at Opryland in about 88 or 9. And I remember one of the last shows I did there, I was starting to work myself into some writing appointments with people around town. And I met all these people and was actually getting some interest in a publishing deal. And then one night I had to do the ASCAP Awards at Opryland. And so I was waiting tables, and I remember being kind of amazed by it all and awed by it all, but at the same time kind of like, dang, wish I was not here waiting tables. I wish I was here for songwriting.
Yeah.
But it made a big impression on me. So, I just did whatever I had to do for a couple of years, and I was fortunate in that I got here in the late 80s, and the 90s was a huge boom in country music particularly, but in the music business in general. And so I benefited from that in a big way.
So let's talk about your first co-writes in town. What was that like? How did you go about getting those? And then eventually, maybe you were able to hook up with some hit writers to write?
Eventually,
what was it like?
Yeah, well, it was once again, I was very fortunate in that I had my wife Becky, and she actually got a job at Tree International Publishing Company right off the bat when we first moved here as a receptionist, and after a couple of months they moved her into the copyright department. And Tree International at that time was the largest independent music publisher in the world, country or any otherwise. And they had accumulated some pretty good catalogs over the years, and they eventually got bought out by CBS, and then CBS got bought out by Sony, so now they're Sony ATV. The ATV came from when they merged with Michael Jackson's catalog, and actually stuff he owned. I think, isn't that right, or was that, yeah, that's right, yeah. The broad strokes anyway. So, I actually just would go down there and hang out at her office any chance I had, and writers were walking in the back. Her office was right by the back door, so writers would come and go all day. And she'd say, "This is my boyfriend at the time, Chuck." And I met a couple of guys there, Ray Kennedy and Bobby David, who were writing together a lot, and they had some cuts and probably some hits in the past. And Ray Kennedy went on to be a kind of a two-hit wonder in the '90s himself. Had a song called "Women Are Going to Be the Death of Me, But What a Way to Go." It was his big single. So anyway, through meeting those guys, they took me under their wing and basically invited me over to their house to write every day with them. And when they were doing something else, he let me hang out in a room. So I was very fortunate. Just timing and, happening to run into people who were gracious enough to want to, obviously see something in me worth helping to develop for no return on their part whatsoever.
Don't find that often. Yeah. Were you a little intimidated or something when you first started writing with them, or you could just, what was that like when you first started?
Maybe the first time I showed up, but they were fairly relaxed guys, and it was a fascinating experience. I remember because Ray Kennedy he still has a studio here in town, and he produces all kinds of projects, a lot of rock acts as well as country stuff. But Ray, we would go in and we would start about, back then actually, believe it or not, writers started working at 9 a.m. when I first started. And then when I was doing it a couple of years, everybody started pushing it back to 10, and then it became 10:30, and now it's 11 half the time. But that's fine with me. I'm a night owl anyway. But we show up at 9 o'clock, start writing a song, and hopefully we'd have one by the middle of the afternoon. And Ray would start making a track in the studio, and I would leave there a lot of times at 9 o'clock at night with a full demo in my hand. And they were both signed to Tree, and they were taking me down there and introducing me to the people that ran things and trying to get me signed there. Came close to signing there, but it wound up somewhere else.
So what happened? You ended up getting a deal, was it after 2 years of being in town?
I came here in '87 and I signed my first publishing deal in 1989, September of '89. And basically there was a fellow that I'd met through an ASCAP workshop or something like that, and we started writing once a week, and he got signed to a publishing deal. And his publisher, at the same time I was actually in discussion, I was negotiating a contract with EMI, I take it back. I had met one of their pluggers at an ASCAP workshop. One of these things where it's like you go for 6 weeks and everybody gets to submit 2 songs. If you ever get a chance to do that, it's a great experience. And one of EMI's pluggers was on the panel 1 week. They had a different panel every week, I think. And she liked the 2 songs that I submitted, so she was going to sign me based on those 2 songs, basically. And during the process of negotiating this 40, 50-page contract with EMI, I met this other guy. We were writing a lot, and so I wound up meeting his publisher, which was a smaller boutique company, a brand new startup, kind of like the people I'm with now. And this company went on to be one of the most successful smaller publishing companies in the '90s here in town, actually. And so he said, "Man, I'll pay you $50 more a week than they're giving you." I said, "Done."
Money talks.
Well, that, and also I was hanging out at EMI at a party one night, and I was just listening to the writers there, and they were all very disgruntled and unhappy, and I was like, I don't think I want to be here. And it's one of the largest publishers in the world too, so it's an easy place to get lost at.
So what happened? So you get signed, things start happening all of a sudden, or what?
Well, it was actually fairly quick. Things started happening for me, and once again, it had a lot to do with the situation. It's all about so much about who you know and what they're doing. So the guy that owned the publishing company I signed to, Chuck Howard, he was Chuck Howard Jr. His dad was Chuck Howard Sr., who wrote "Always on a Mountain When I Fall." So Chuck had grown up in the industry, and he was really wanted to be a producer. And he was starting to produce acts at the same time he had this killer publishing company going on. So he began to cut my songs on the acts that he was producing. And the company was a co-venture with some other fellows named James Stroud, Jimmy Bowen, and Bill Ham, who all wound up, Bill Ham was ZZ Top's manager, producer, publisher. And he was a co-owner with Jimmy Bowen in this company, as was James Stroud and Chuck Howard. Our company was a co-venture with them. A lot of these publishing companies get really, really convoluted. But at any rate, so I had four producers actually, but Bill Ham never came to town. He was always in Texas, and he was just the money guy. But Jimmy Bowen was still one of the biggest producers in town, and he was running Capitol. Actually, yeah, he just started running Capitol Records. James Stroud was just becoming one of the hottest producers in town. He was producing Clint Black was his first big act, and then Chuck Howard went on to produce, my publisher went on to produce Billy Dean and John Berry, two of the acts that I had a lot of success with in the early 90s. And so it was very fortunate that I signed with that company and that there was what we call inside cuts. In other words, we weren't having to go, we were going and pitching, and I was getting outside cuts too, but I really got the ball rolling, and my early career was benefited a lot from having, just from the mere sake of the fact I was writing for a publishing company that was owned by a bunch of producers.
Yeah. Sort of like now.
Yeah, sort of like now, yeah.
Yeah. So you start having the success, start getting these cuts. What was that like, and what did that lead to? Other co-writes?
Sure.
Talk about that first cut. What happened? What was it like?
Oh man, I'm trying to remember. The first cut was actually a band called Trader Price and Jimmy Bowen. I remember when I first started getting songs put on hold, as we say. That's when an artist says they want to record that song, so don't play it for anybody else. Yeah, I remember it was really, and it's still a great feeling to get a song put on hold. But I've had enough of them now that we've gone by the wayside that you don't really get excited. You used to have a saying that it ain't final till it's a vinyl, which of course is an extremely outdated saying, but it still works in principle. But basically, it was such a great feeling, man. I think it was a band that never went anywhere named Trader Price that Jimmy Bowen was producing, and he cut my first song. It was called From One Lover to Another. I remember I got the idea from eating lunch with a guy one day I was writing with, and we were in some bar up in Hendersonville, and there was a sign on the, we were eating at a pub actually, and it said From One Beer Lover to Another. It was a Miller commercial thing, and so I just took the beer out. We took the beer out and wrote From One Lover to Another, and which had the little internal twisty thing, going from one lover to another and speaking from one. Anyway, I won't get into that. But that was my first cut. Yeah. And my first really exciting cut was a song I'd written in my first 6 months that was put on hold originally for a duet with Ronnie Millsap and Aretha Franklin. And then they couldn't get their record labels, after it was on hold for them for a year, they couldn't get their record labels to agree on anything, so we wound up doing it with Patti LaBelle. It became so even though it never was a single and it was on Ronnie Millsap's, it was just a album cut on Ronnie Millsap's last album on a major label, I think. It was a big PR boost for me. It was written up in the papers. I remember when Patti LaBelle flew to town to make the record. The Entertainment Tonight showed up, and me and the co-writer got to go to the studio when they were doing all of that and get our pictures made with everybody. Oh, it was heady days, Doak. Heady days.
Man. We all look forward to that, don't we? Having those happen. So let's talk about, you mentioned the idea you got from us sign. Where's some of the better ideas, the other ideas that you've gotten for your great songs? Let's take Love a Little Stronger. Where'd you get that? What was that? You remember that co-writing? What does that?
Yeah, I do. That was actually, I was writing with two guys then who were not really writers so much as they were singers, and they were trying to put a trio together, and they had a financial backer, and I'd had enough success at that point to where I was. People were approaching me about producing projects every now and then. I never really embraced it, but at any rate, we were sitting around and we were trying to write songs for them. So we were writing harmony songs intentionally, which is why it worked out so well for Diamond Rio, I think. But at any rate, we came up with that, and we didn't have a hook to begin with. They were great melody guys, and I would sit there, play guitar, and we'd start singing, and they'd start singing harmonies. And I love writing like that. It was real inspirational to be singing and writing, and I generally, my method is I play guitar and sing, or piano, but usually guitar and sing at the same time, and just wait till a melody worth something falls out, hopefully. So, and it's really inspirational when you have harmony background singers doing that with you, you know. And so we wound up just coming up with this cool melody and started writing a verse, but originally we were actually saying, I think, dang, it's a little harder or something like that. And I don't think we actually got the hook until we had the song halfway done. And eventually it just occurred to us, it was like, oh, you know what, love a little stronger, that's what it needs to be. So it was one of those that came after the fact. Usually I'll start out with a hook 90% of the time. But
You usually go into a writing session with someone with about 5 or 10 ideas, or you just sit and talk, or you have a guitar hook, or a melody, or what?
All of the above, man, all of the above. I remember hooking up with Craig Wiseman one day, and we hadn't written in a long time, and he was one of the first guys I met 20 years ago when neither one of us had any success. But I asked him if he had any idea, and he said he hadn't had an idea since the Carter administration, you know. But if you write 5 days a week, you know, you're generally ideas are gonna be, but I mean, I used to read a lot of books, I still read a few books. Watch a lot of movies, you know, get them from conversation, from signs. I was actually coming back from a writing trip a couple of weeks ago with some guys me and a couple other writers, rented a cabin over in Pigeon Forge and took a broken bow artist over there for a couple of days to hole up with him and write songs. And we wrote 4 songs, and then on the ride back on Sunday, I was just driving, we were riding down the interstate, all 4 of us in the same car, and passed a billboard, and I just split second out of the corner of my eye, I saw it, and I was like, man, that's a cool thing. It was a farmer kind of a billboard, you know. It was a cool saying. I was like, was that ever been written? They're like, well, I don't know, but if it ain't, let's do it tomorrow. So we ended up actually canceling everything we had for the next day and going in and getting a 5th song the next day, So you never know where the idea is going to come from. I mean, if I hadn't looked up, we wouldn't have that song, you know. But I write everything. When I'm watching movies, I'll often, you know, write down things that I hear that sounds like titles, sounds like hooks. And I'm always on the lookout for them in newspapers and magazines and books, you name it.
What do you do with it? Do you have like a central idea book or something?
Yeah.
To co-write, or how does that work for you? Working
stacks of legal pads that I kept for years. I was a real late bloomer in as far as laptops go. I didn't get my first laptop till like a year ago. So now I keep them all in my computer. Saves a little time, but yeah, I just keep that file usually open a lot of times. Just breeze by there and write something in it.
Let's talk about It's What I Do. I would like to get some of your hit songs.
Yeah.
Talk about the process. You know, that's interesting, so we can see, okay, this is where those things come from. Let's talk about writing that great song. It's one of my very favorites.
Oh, well, thank you, man. That was actually, that was my hook, but it was actually, it was one of those sayings that's in the popular lexicon, you know, pretty much. I mean, oh, that's what I do, that's what I do. Oh, you know, like somebody would compliment somebody on, you know, how well they did something. They go, that's what I do, you know. So I was thinking about that one day. Actually, I had a writing appointment the next day with Tom Shapiro, who we were at the same publishing company back in the 90s, and Tom was one of the most successful writers in town that ever has been, and probably the most least publicized. But he's probably had 20 or 30 number ones in his career, and just a huge writer, probably be Hall of Fame one of these days. But he used to get referred to as the King of Fluff a lot back in those days. But he was producing Billy Dean's, one of his later projects. It had been a while since Billy had a hit, actually. And so we got together specifically for the purpose of trying to write something for him to record on Billy. And so I knew they needed a ballad. They needed a good ballad, which is very rare. And I was just driving home the day before that appointment, and I remember just driving home, and all of a sudden, I don't know if I'd heard somebody say that or if that just crossed my mind, and I thought, that would make a good hook. And you know, back then, that was pre-Google, so I would just write any hook that came to my mind back then. These days, I'll Google it to see if it's been a number one recently or on the charts.
So you really get together and you discuss different ideas, or you knew exactly where you were going? Or
I didn't write it with Billy. I wrote it with Tom Shapiro, his producer.
Sorry.
Yeah, but we got together, and I also wrote my first actual hit with Tom, which was called "Only the Wind," which was also on Billy Dean. It was a top 5 record for Billy in the early '90s. It's What I Do was the late '90s, I believe. But we got together, and I told him the hook. He loved the hook, so we just started with first. You know, Tom's a very methodical writer. And so he generally wants to know where the second verse is going before he ever commits anything to paper, you know. he wants to have the roadmap all laid out there. So it's an obvious sentiment, you know. It's what I do, loving you. You know? So it was pretty clear where we needed to go with it. And the only problem was just finding an interesting way to get there, you know. So, and I remember when we came up with the I don't remember where the idea came from, but with the device of the first verse being sounding like you're talking third person, which you don't generally try to trick people like that, especially in country music, because country lyrics are fairly linear and fairly clear usually. But, you know, it was like, I knew a man, you know. He was a real go-getter. What he did best was climb the ladder of success, you know. How far he went was how he measured the worth of his life and who he was. But that's all behind me now because loving you is what I do. And we talked about that for a while. Is that a good idea? Stretch them, hang them out there like that, and then if they miss a channel, man, we're losing them. But we hung with it, and I think it was a good idea. I've always been proud of that song.
And I think the one that everyone knows you for, it's like one of the most incredible songs ever written. You know, Your Love Amazes Me.
Oh man, I appreciate it.
And let's talk about the story of that, how it happened
Well,
from the beginning, the idea all the way through.
Yeah. Well, I can't take credit for that idea. That was actually my co-writer's idea. Amanda Hunt was her name. It's Amanda Hunt Taylor now. She's been married since. But Amanda was a young writer who was just breaking in at the time, and a friend of mine who had part of her publishing hooked us up to write together. And that was one of the first ideas Amanda brought to me. And she had just gotten engaged the weekend before we started writing the song. And her boyfriend at the time they'd gone to Florida for the weekend down on the beach. And she came back and told me this story about how he got down on his knees at sunset on the beach, pulled a ring out of his pocket and asked her to marry him. You know, it was the whole movie-like scenario. And she just said that she was laying in bed later that evening or later that weekend and just thinking about how his love amazed her. And so, and she actually had not the chorus, not the verse melody, but she had that da 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 da. She had that melodic motif already, and basically she might have had some words, but we basically kind of started from scratch, and it fell out pretty quick. But you know, interestingly enough, that song when we first wrote it, it had a chorus that I couldn't even sing you now, and it's been lost, I'm sure. But her publisher didn't like, the girl that introduced us didn't like the chorus to the first version of it, so we actually went back in and totally rewrote the chorus musically and lyrically and everything before we demoed it. And then that was one of those songs that's probably been cut 5 times, more than any other song of mine. And one of them was a Spanish language version. It was cut by Joel Nava, I believe. But so it's one of those that really paid off anyway. It was
So did your publisher take it, the first person love it, and you know, here's this new guy coming out, or what? You know, how does that happen for you?
Interestingly enough, the first person to cut that song was Tanya Tucker. She had put it on hold and cut it, but the story I heard was that it didn't make the record because, you know, they made up some BS story about, you know, they didn't make the record because somebody had a phone off and there was a click track bleeding somewhere. And we're like, whatever, you know. So in the meantime, another artist on RCA at the time, or Sony at the time, I forget, they move around so much, but a fellow named Andy Childs, who was from Memphis, who I knew from Memphis actually. He was cutting a record with Josh, I forget Josh. Leo, yeah, Josh Leo at the time. And they cut a version of that, was kind of mid-tempo. And he was the first one that actually had recorded it. But before his record came out, my publisher started producing John Barry. And so basically, he hooked me up to write with John. I had five songs on John's first album. 2 of them I wrote with John, and 3 of them I didn't. But what my publisher did, he just took John and played in my entire catalog, you know, and John actually loved my singing and he liked my stuff, so he wound up kind of minding my catalog, which was fine with me because I knew he was a great singer right off the bat. And he's one of those artists that never really made it to the stratosphere. He was a mid-level, what we call a mid-level act, his whole career pretty much, but very honorable guy and a great singer, and I thought he did a great record on it. So he heard that song and loved it, and so my publisher just said, I don't care who's cutting it, we're cutting this on John Barry. And they did, and he was the first one that managed to release it as a single, so worked out well.
It did. So you're writing with an artist. Any artists out there? Any people who are upcoming artists? Great.
Quite a few. Cool.
Raise your hand again. Okay, see all the songwriters? Get to know these people. Network, get them out. There's a lot of talent right here. I'll bet you, a couple of years from now, somebody's going to be on the radio and say, man, he was sitting right there, right there.
That's right.
Right? Have you seen that happen?
Sure. I know some writers who passed up an opportunity to write with Garth Brooks before he had his record out. And I've looked back on it very sourly ever since.
Take notes, y'all. Pay attention out there. But
you know, you can't write with everybody. I mean, there's so many artists that come to town, but a lot of what we do is actually artist co-writes.
So when you're writing with an artist, is that any difference than when you're writing with just another writer for you?
A lot of times it is. It depends on the artist, because very few of them are actually very solid songwriters. Now some of them do have a good sense about songs, and so they're helpful, and they actually know what they want to say. They can help you in that regard. But I've written with very few, only a small handful, and I've written with probably a couple hundred artists in my career at least. But a small handful who can actually sit down there and spit you out a verse or say, let's write this hook. Generally it's like, yeah, I'd say that, or no, I wouldn't say that, or I'd say it like this. Then at the same time, some of them are actually very good writers. Like Luke Bryan, he writes a lot of his stuff. He writes a lot of it with Dallas Davidson, but he's in there on some that he writes by himself. And there's some artists are actually worth their salt, but it's not the rule.
Talk about writing up. Some of the people in the room have had the opportunity to write up with hit writers. Some of them, I'm sure, would love to. If you're sitting out there, what's the best thing you can do to be able to write with a hit writer? How does that process? What's the best things you've seen happen over the years for that to happen?
Everybody wants to do that. I'm still trying to do it myself, I'll pretty much drop what I'm doing and rearrange my whole schedule if Jeffrey Steele calls up or texts and says, hey, what are you doing today? But so it's something that we're all susceptible to, and it's not a bad thing, but I will say this concerning writing up. It's not necessarily everything you always think it's going to be, because if you're really meant to be a songwriter, then you've got something to say. And you've got a special way, unique way of saying it. Now, there is a certain thing to be said for sitting in the room with someone who's on a roll and who's hot, and people are cutting their crappy songs. They're that hot. I've known writers that were that hot, But at the same time, just because you're writing with them doesn't mean you're going to write a hit that day, because they write a lot of crappy songs too, believe it or not. Even the very successful ones do. The thing I've noticed about the ones who are the most successful is that they write a lot of songs. They're very dedicated to their craft. And through that, the cream starts rising to the top. Number one, you have more practice at your craft. And number two, you just wind up, it's a matter of numbers. After a while, you're going to write more of everything, more great songs and more crap. But, if you get the opportunity, do it by all means. Write with somebody who's had more success than you. But don't hang your whole career on doing that kind of thing, because I have known people who that's all they ever wanted to do was write with somebody that was more successful. When if they maybe sat down and just tried to write the best song, that really tried to hone their craft. And I see, it's just important, actually, especially when you're starting out, to write alone as it is to write up, just to make sure that you've got something to say. And if you do get a chance to write up, make sure you don't show up and ask them, what do you got? Because believe me, they're not writing with you so they can pull out their best ideas. They're hoping you're going to bring something to the table. And, I've done it, and I still have people who approach me. And don't be mad if they don't call you back, because I've been the guy that didn't call people back, and I've been the guy that people didn't call back. It works both ways, and you just got to let it roll off your back and go on and move on to whatever's next.
Sorry to interrupt, but we're about that time of the evening where maybe we'd like to hear a song or two from Chuck. Yeah.
My pleasure, man. Thank you, Doak. I enjoyed it.
All right, thank you.
Makes it hard to read. Yeah, brand new strings, because I care. what I thought I would do, I know we're going to have some of you guys come up in a little while, and we're going to do a round together, actually, which I'm looking forward to. I thought I would do is just a little medley of some songs I had on the radio, and then maybe play another a new song or something like that. And then I have a special guest I want to get up to do one number with me here in just a little bit too. Starbucks. Where would songwriters be without them? Should work this out ahead of time. I knew a man, he was a real go-getter. What he did best was climb the ladder of success. How far he went was how he measured the worth of his life and who he was. If that's all behind me now, because loving you, it's what I do. It's the one thing I found I can put my heart into. It's who I am, I'm a lucky man, living the life I choose. Loving you is what I do. Done this in a while. Could there be a different ending to the same old story? 'Cause you're not the first to say you're gonna be there for me. I need to know what's in your heart. Can you finish what you start? How can I be sure I won't be sorry? If heartaches and tears and shadows of doubt are part of the deal, you can count me out. But if you're talking about a game I can't win, you can count me in. Thank you. That last thing was the thing I wrote with Dina Carter, who was an artist I had first met when she was just starting out and hanging around our publishing company a bunch. And she wound up being signed as an artist on Capitol Records for 5 years before they actually released a record on her. And during that amount of time, fortunately, I got acquainted with her and we wound up writing a bunch of songs. And that was one of her singles off of her first album. That interesting side story, she that first album on her sold 5 million copies, and mainly on the strength of Strawberry Wine. And I had 3 songs I had written with Dina on there, and I had half my publishing on all 3 of them. And one of our songs, called I've Loved Enough to Know, was slated to be her first single, actually. And it was one of those situations, they'd already done the video on it and everything, and I was actually touring around a little bit with Dina, doing some radio stuff, and as a duo with her, just playing guitar and singing backgrounds with her. And we were doing a show in Reno, I remember one night, just when her single's getting ready to come out, the video was already done. I was so pumped, man. We had the first single and everything, and at this particular event, all these PDs came up to the label people and were saying, "We don't think that's the single. We think you guys ought to play this 4-minute 3/4 ballad," which was a very unusual thing for anybody to ask, especially radios to impose upon themselves, because it's hard to get them to play a ballad that's 4 minutes long or however long, and particularly hard to get them to play a waltz ballad. So, but they demanded it basically, so they scrapped our first single and scrapped the video and went in and did one on Strawberry Wine. But it was one of those situations where, in retrospect, and I realized this at the time too, that song was such a huge song for her. It was kind of like her, you know, it wouldn't have sold 5 million records on the strength of our song. So that was one of those situations where you had to just lay back and say, well, you know what? I've got 3 songs on a 5 million selling record, so shut up and cash the checks. And I did get a single off that album on Count Me In that I just did eventually. It was 2 or 3 singles down. But I'm going to do one more song before I bring my special guest up. This is a song I wrote last year. Me and a friend and co-writer, and actually the guy who's my publisher now, Derek George, wrote this with an artist named Kip Moore, a young guy around town. And after we wrote it and demoed it and got Kip to sing it, we never heard Kip say anything else about it. And then here just a few months ago, my plugger, bless his heart, emailed a copy to Jake Owen. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Jake or not, but he's an old friend too. But it never occurred to me to pitch him songs. And he actually just cut this song, like this week, I believe. So this is going to make it on Jake's new record, which hopefully he'll have another hit. Hopefully this will be one of them. Jake says this is his life story, basically. sun was sinking slow. That horizon had a haunting glow. I could see those heat waves rising off the ground. We were sitting on go with that old stop sign, headlights shining on the county line. It was do or die, had to get out of that town. You said run, we were so young, trying to set the world on fire, turn the key, spark the wire, chasing down a feeling, running on desire. The future was an open road, gone in a cloud of smoke, leaving a trail of flames behind those tires. You and me, girl, setting the world on fire. Blazing down the road like a Kerouac, no time to stop and cover our tracks. We were too damn hot for any one town to hold, and we burned through a few good years. Then you started looking back in that rear view mirror, right outside of Reno the trail went cold. You said you had enough of this rambling love, try to set the world on fire, turn the key, spark the wire, chasing down a feeling, running on desire. The future of an open road, gone in a cloud of smoke, and leaving a trail of flames behind those tires. But for a while there, girl, we were setting the world on fire. Pulling on a lucky strike about to head west, riding off into God's sunset. Times like this I always think of you, but you know me, I'll always be trying to set the world on fire, turn the key, spark the wire, chasing down a feeling, running on desire. Future is an open road, gone in a cloud of smoke, leaving a trail of flames behind these tires. Out here, girl, still setting the world on fire, setting the world on fire, still setting the world on fire. Thank you. All right. I got a special guest now I'm going to bring up to do a number before we do the Q&A. Savannah Grace Jones, are you in the house? Where you be? Where you been hiding at? She's been back there looking at guitars, haven't you? Everybody, this is my daughter, Savannah Grace Jones. Going to render a number here for us. She is writing songs, but she's not feeling comfy enough to do any of her originals out yet. I'll keep trying to talk her into it. She's writing some great stuff with actually her little friend Ruby Lochner, Victoria Shaw's daughter. They're best friends. That's what I heard, yeah. And so they've been writing some great stuff. Maybe next time. What are you going to do for us this evening, Savannah?
I'm going to sing I'm Yours by Jason Mraz.
Cool.
We're just so hard that I'm melted, fell right through the cracks. Now I'm trying to get back before the cool I'm running out. Be giving it my best test, and nothing gonna stop me but divine intervention. Reckon it's again now.
Thank you, Savannah Grace Jones. You'll be hearing a lot about her, hopefully. Thank you. Okay, what's next, Doak? Q&A, is that what we're going to do? All right, cool. There you go.
There we go, yeah. Oh man, that's gonna make you proud.
Oh, yeah, no, not at all, man. Just a little bit.
Yeah. Did you encourage
She's a hoot, huh?
Do you encourage your kids to get in, or is it something, how do you
Well, yeah, I've always encouraged her to do musical things, but she just kind of, she was 8, she started just kind of singing like 8-year-olds shouldn't sing, you know, so obviously at that point I started really encouraging it. And she also started bringing me ideas and wanted to write with me, and she's actually a good little writer too, man. So yeah, it's something I definitely encourage, but it's all pretty much natural stuff there, man.
We have people in the audience that just moved to town a month ago, people that have been here a year, people 8, 10 years. What advice do you give to the people that just came to town, Chuck?
Oh man, well, you know, you'll hear a lot of stuff around these days about how the music industry is pretty much gone by the wayside, and you can't make any money at it anymore. And to a large extent, that's true. But I remain optimistic. I think there's still, who knows? It's the Wild Wild West right now, and nobody really knows how it's going to shake down. But long story short, that as long as there are people with ears, they're going to want to hear music, and it all starts with a song. Without somebody sitting there with a song in their pocket, none of the wheels start grinding. You know, the whole town comes to a stop if the song stops. So I say, just keep your optimism and try to just network. Every time somebody comes to town fresh, they always meet a certain group through hanging out at the Bluebird or hanging out at wherever, writers' nights, and you come up with that group of people. And I've seen groups coming up behind me that have turned into like the Hillary Lindsays and the Dallas Davidsons and you name it. Some of them become some of the biggest writers in town. So just do what you do and find people that want to do it with you, man.
People have been here 5 years. I've been here 8 years next month. Some more than that. How do you keep going? You know, we're trying to do this. What have stories? What have you seen people do and successes from that persistence?
Well, you know, I was kind of an unusual case. I actually lucked out, like I said earlier, getting into a really good situation early on in my career, and it started taking off pretty quick. But I've known people who have been here for 8 years before they ever had a cut. Well, you know, and then they became very successful. You know, like Don Schlitz, for instance, who wrote The Gambler back when I was a young man. He had that huge hit on Kenny Rogers, and then he didn't get another cut for 5 years after that. And then, of course, 5 years later, the world was his oyster. All of a sudden, he never had a week go by without a song in the top 10 for 10 years after that. But there are stretches, you know. Sometimes it's just very much a matter of timing. And sometimes it can be not the right time for your style, what you do, and then suddenly all of a sudden that's the end thing, you know. So,
what do you do to stay positive in between the slumps? Well, not a slump because you're writing, but in between the big successes that are your goals.
Drink? No, I'm kidding. Just a little bit, but no. Of course, you know, even when you're on a roll, I mean, you wouldn't believe it. I mean, I've seen people like, you know, that have Writer of the Year people who are coming up and like they're out of sorts and they're put off and they're like mad and they're angry because I say, what's the matter, man? What on earth could possibly be wrong with you? Like, oh man, I just lost so lost this, lost that, you know, and I hadn't had a cut in 6 weeks, and I'm like, oh yeah, I see, you know, problems are abound, don't they? So everything's relative, you know, and you know, I've been really lucky. I've been like on wood, making a living in the business for 20 years now, either publishing it myself or having somebody, you know, give me a draw to write for them, and you know, who knows how much longer it'll go on, but you know, you just do what you do, and hopefully somebody will like it, and you'll get in with some people who are like-minded as you, and you'll write some great stuff, and somebody will cut it, and next thing you know, you're on the radio.
Anybody have any questions out there? Questions for Chuck? Anybody have it all figured out?
I've covered it all.
You must have.
Yes.
How do you record your demos?
Oh, all kinds of ways, actually. I mean, I do have, when I was writing for myself for about 6 years earlier in the first of this century, first 5 or 6 years of the century, I was actually doing a lot of demos at home. I have a studio in my house, but it's not a big studio. I don't have ISO booths or anything. I've just got a Pro Tools. Actually, I just recently upgraded to Pro Tools 8, and it's just all now. It's on Inbox 2, and I'm using my laptop. But I've got some good gear, some good old mics, and some good pre's and a good compressor. But as long as you got a good microphone and a good compressor, and if you can play guitar or piano, you can get the bare bones of your song down. And you know, some people get really good at making tracks, and those are the cats that actually become producers. You know, I'm not that guy, but I know enough about it to be able to at least get a decent representation of the song down. I do that, and then I book sessions since I've got a publisher who's willing to front me the money to pay for it these days. So you know, I go on a regular basis, probably 4 or 5 times a year with a 4, 5, 6, 7-piece band sometimes, and cut 5 songs at a time, something like that.
Anybody else? Questions?
Hey, Doak.
Yes.
And so, what do you love most about what you do?
Oh, what I love most about what I do, man, I tell you. Well, you know, my dream job, actually, this has got to be the dream job, I have to say. You know, it's like you can wake up, and you can do it anywhere in the world. You can go to the islands and write if you want to, you know. You can do it in your own house. You can go to somebody else's house. You don't have to show up at a factory, that kind of deal. And, you know, the best thing about it is that I get to basically, you know, spend my day with a guitar in my hands. Because really that's what I love the most about it, is playing. And when you get in, I love both. I love all aspects of music, and I love all kinds of music. I just wound up in Nashville, actually. I'd never played in a country band, and I've never had that. Well, I take it back. When I was in my 20s out in L.A. going to Guitar Institute of Technology, I actually have a certificate that says I'm a certified guitar player now. But after a 1-year curriculum, believe it or not. But I don't know if it will live up to Chet's standards or not. But good night, girls. Y'all be safe. But just the fact that I get to get up every day and make a living playing music. I mean, what could be better than that? It's what I always dreamed of as a kid, and I just hope and pray every day that I get to continue to do it a little longer.
Chuck, have you made any mistakes in Nashville over the years?
Not a one.
What did you learn from them, and how?
Sure, mistakes, man. Mistakes. Well, mistakes they're relative acts and relative things, because a lot of times your mistakes are the best thing you ever did. You messed up an appointment, and you got you're there on the wrong day, but so and so showed up and his appointment canceled, and before you know it, you're writing with somebody you didn't know, and you write the best song you've ever written in your life. So mistakes, yeah, I've made some, man. I mean, I've passed up on writing with artists who went on to become successful, and wished, on looking back on it, that I had gotten on that train before it left the station. But you gotta just pretty much make your decisions and move on down the road and live by them, and hopefully you're bringing enough to the table yourself to where you're going to actually be in demand at some point.
Anybody else out there? Any questions?
Yeah.
Sir.
Do you stick to a typical structure? Do you find yourself
Song structure?
stuck? Yeah, and then
I do, simply because, let's face it, popular music is a very structured thing. It's generally in this town, it's first chorus, bridge, or solo, chorus, and you're on your way out. But I have gotten off of that, and some of my hits have been off that. Only the Wind, the song that was the first actual hit I had on the radio by Billy Dean, was a very odd structure. It was a verse, then a chorus, then we went to a bridge, and I can't remember what it. But anyway, we had an instrumental thing, and then back to another verse. And then, so we put the bridge in a very odd place, And I remember we discussed it at the time. And actually, I'm going to play it on our round coming up, but I wrote a song yesterday with my buddy Tim Johnson that has an unusual structure to it. But it just works that way. And when we wrote it, we were like, it doesn't want to do another one of those things we were calling a chorus. Again, ever does it? And I'm like, no, it doesn't. So I guess we shouldn't call it a chorus, should we? And, you just find these things out in the process of writing sometimes. But generally, yes, I try to get a hook and stick to a structure. There are a lot of rules in songwriting. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
do you ever write songs that begin with the chorus?
I have. I sure have, yeah. I don't do it as much these days. You don't hear it as much. It's just, certain structures and certain forms come and go in popularity. And when I got here, there were a few songs on the radio that followed that structure. But you don't hear them as much these days. So for that very reason, I don't write them as much. They're just not as popular, so you're less likely to get a cut. But if the song demands it, I'll still do it. And a lot of times it pays off. I love songs that start with a chorus. You don't have to write as many verses either.
Andy, that just moved to town, how long ago? Couple weeks ago?
What are your favorite artists or influences outside of country music?
Outside of country?
Yeah, and or have you ever written, tried advanced in different styles?
Sure, I've actually had a little success in the adult contemporary world. I grew up, like I say, as a kid, I was a blues rock guitar player. I played in blues bands, horn bands. Grew up in Memphis, and I had a real R&B aspect to my stuff, And didn't really start writing until I was in my 20s, and seriously till I was in my early 30s. When I was in my early 30s when I moved to town, so I was somewhat of a late starter. But outside influences, other influences outside of country, songwriting-wise, I guess I have to say a lot of it happened when I was younger, when I didn't realize I was being so influenced. But I grew up loving James Taylor's stuff, and he was one of the first acoustic guitar players that started trying to pick his parts out off his records, And that was back in the turntable days when you could put a 33 on what I forget, but anyway, it cuts it in half, makes it an octave lower, but it's slower. You can learn the parts. So James Taylor, a lot of guitar players influenced me. All the British Invasion, Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page, Jimi Hendrix. I grew up loving that kind of stuff. But as far as songs, you know, gosh, James Taylor, Jackson Brown, the whole 70s slew of songwriter artists, singer-songwriters who were, you know, kind of country flavored, actually. In fact, that's one reason why country music became such a popular idiom in the 90s, was because that was when I was in my 30s, and all of us had grown up listening to all that cool country rock in the 70s, and country music out in Nashville all of a sudden sounded like that. And there was a reason for that, because a lot of those LA cats moved to Nashville, started playing on the records. And eventually a lot of people started moving here from there to write as well. You know, I've been fortunate to write with some people who were kind of heroes of mine as a child, like Mac Davis, for instance. I used to watch him on his TV show when I was just a kid, man. I've been fortunate enough to write a few songs with Mac through the years. Charlie Daniels, I wrote a bunch of songs with Charlie back in the 90s. But I don't know, as far as influences, man, I've been influenced by so much stuff. I grew up playing classical guitar, you know, and just lately I've gotten kind of become a fan of jazz guitar. But I've probably been more of a guitar head than I have a songwriter head in my life. I just kind of lucked into coming here at the right time and getting a publishing deal and fell in love with it, and, you know, making it up as I go along, to tell you the truth.
It's not very big.
Probably sold 10 million albums and we just never heard of you, have we?
I'd love to hear something.
Yeah.
Pick us up.
Got a song that I co-wrote with a friend of mine a couple of years ago. Saw the strangest thing the other day. I thought I saw a teacher, a little girl playing, but I was mistaken, as I soon would find out. That little girl was Susie, was a teacher crying out. Swing me round again, Daddy, swing me round again. I know that sure is fun, so let's do it again. Whoa, swing me round again, Daddy, swing me round again. Know it's getting late, so I'll see you again. Daddy was in Sunday school, I learned, since he was a little girl, so I heard. Daddy come running with his arms out open wide, and she would take him by there and turn him round. He'd say, swing me round again, Miss Susie, swing me round again. I know this sure is fun, let's do it again. Whoa, swing me round again, Miss Susie, swing me round again. I know my daddy's waiting, so I'll see you again. There's something that I learned about life that day. You'll always be remembered by the games we played. And I turn my eyes of power, and a tear came rolling down. I heard a voice behind me, I turned around. Swing me round again, Daddy, swing me round again. I know this sure is fun, let's do it again. Whoa, swing me round again, Daddy, swing me round again. You can't be getting tired, come on, let's do it again. One more time, swing me round again, Daddy, swing me round again. Till the sun comes up, Mom will understand, 'cause you got me by the hand. Ooh, you got me by the hand. Daddy, take my hand.
Fantastic, man. I love your voice. Very nice, man. So it's called Sing Your Own? That's beautiful, man. It's beautiful. I'm a sucker for those kind of songs, too. All right.
I'm gonna play a song called Burning Rubber. Hope y'all like it. And now I'm nervous because I don't like surprises. I got my daddy's boots and his cowboy hat. Well, everything I own strapped to my back. I got a whiskey and a whole lot of time. Going 2 miles an hour toward the Mason-Dixon line. Well, I was born to be a rambler, and there's no tying me down. I don't need no white collar bossing me around. I'm a roughneck rider who don't play by the rules. Burning rubber in my daddy's shoes. Ain't got no woman, ain't got no job. I'm getting pretty dang good at getting gone. I got a pocket full of dreams in my daddy's flask. There's no stopping me, but no, there's no looking back. Well, I was born to be a rambler, and there's no tying me down. I don't need no white collar bossing me around. Well, I'm a roughneck rider who don't play by the rules. Burning rubber in my daddy's shoes. Well, I was born to be tie me down. I don't need no white collar bossing me around. I'm a roughneck rider who don't play by the rules. Burning rubber. I'm still burning rubber. In my daddy's shoes. In my daddy's shoes.
See if I can get through this here. It's called Take a Lot of Love and a Good Heart Prayer. Take a lot of love and a good heart prayer. Touch your heart, show them that you care. Pray that they see a lot of love that you can share. Take a lot of love and a good heart prayer. Just 17, wanting to be 23. You don't understand that comes responsibility. The choices that you make, the roads that you choose, dictate your life, whether you win or lose. So take a lot of love, well, and a good heart prayer. young girl's heart and show that you care. Pray that she sees all the love there is to share. It'll take a lot of love, yeah, and a good hard prayer. Straight out of school and a newborn on his way. Not how he had it planned, but that's what happens when you play. Takes a lot of strength not to up and run away. Time to take a stand and realize change is on its way. So take a lot of love, well, and a good hard prayer. Touch a young man's heart, show that you care. Pray that he sees all the love we have to share. Take a lot of love, well, and a good hard prayer. Let me hear you pray now. Everybody's fighting all over the world. People are dying, little boys and little girls. I don't care about power or religion, true power's up above. It's time we all see it if we want to receive his love. So take a lot of love, well, and a good hard prayer. Touch somebody's heart and show that you care. Pray that they see all the suffering and despair. But take a lot of love, well, and a good hard prayer. And take a lot of love, yeah, show that young girl some little love. Yeah, show that young man some love too. Take a lot of love and a good hard prayer. Take a lot of love and a good hard prayer.
Excellent, man. Cool little R&B vibe too.
I'm gonna love you forever. I'm gonna have all your babies. When morning shines in sugar, I make you biscuits and gravy. I sing you love songs every day on my granddaddy's old guitar. At night we'll dance barefoot in our PJs, neath a blanket of stars. We'll still be rocking on the porch, holding hands when we're 105. We'll still be kissing and hugging and loving. This'll be one hell of a ride. Let's jump into this beautiful brand new life. Can't wait to ride with you, ride with you. We're 105. I like my lead player. Oceans don't ebb and flow without a tug from that silvery moat. Honeybees can't make honey, you know, if they can't buzz the blooms. And you sure been tugging on me, buzzed on your love, floating on air. I'm your flower, you're my sugar bee, we'll make honey for years. You'll still be right. Can't wait to rock with you when we're 105. Sweet, sweet memories we're gonna make on this love journey we're about to take. Let's get this party started. Let's jump into this beautiful brand new life. Can't wait to rock with you when we're 105. Can't wait to rock with you when we're 105. I'm gonna love you forever.
Great song. All right. Yeah.
Go last.
Do what now?
Go last.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. Yeah. Rachel's next. You told me that, and I forgot all about it.
No. Hey, you're the big honcho here. I'm gonna close.
No worries, man.
Alrighty, this is Summer Strawberries. Yeah. Da 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 da. The smell of charcoal can take you back to neighborhood picnics and homemade snacks. He'd grab her hand and give a wink. They'd head to the rope swing by the creek. He was even for college that year. She leaned over and whispered in his ear, I want to feel your fingers run through my hair, see you focused on me with that stare as you spin me round in our backyard. Hold
Well, I'm going to try something that, gosh, I'm not sure if I can even remember. I just wrote it yesterday with a buddy of mine, Tim Johnson. This is one of those kind of silly songs, but I like to write them every day. I'm a grass mower and a leaf blower, I'm a frisbee thrower when it's time to play. I'm a garden tiller and a hamburger griller and a melon chiller on a hot summer day. Hey, that's just a few of the things I do around here. I'm the kid tickler, the boo-boo kisser, flat top picker when we need a song. I'm the mouse trapper and the line caster, reeling faster, boy, you got one on. And that's just a few of the things I do around here. La la, la 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 la. When it comes to feeling my heart, man, she's the one who does it. In the morning I wake and make that coffee just the way I know she loves it. Well, I'm a fly swatter, the poodle walker, door locker when out go the lights. I'm a garbage taker and a martini shaker. I'm a love maker when the mood is right. Yeah, that's just a few of the things I do around here. La la, la la, la la, la la, la. She's the one that pulls it all together. Every little thing she does makes my world that much better. 'Cause I'm the light bulb changer, couch rearranger, world's cheapest painter, glad she likes that shade. Flat tie fixer, pancake mixer, yeah, you get the picture, man, I got it made. That's just a few of the things I do around here. La la, la la, la 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 la, la 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 la. A few of the things I do, la, a few of the things I do around here. La 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 la.
Yeah. Woo!
You know, sometimes my wife asks, what do you do around here exactly? So I made up a list.